It's time for Recipe of the Day. Burrito bowl style dinners are a huge hit in my house. I think it's partly because everybody has different likes and dislikes, and so people can kind of build their own. I tend to put out an arrangement of different toppings on a plate, and then people add them. The most basic and favorite one that I do is to cook up some flank steak or skirt steak, and then I cook some rice, or I use leftover rice, and then I put out like typical taco toppings, right? So there's chopped up tomatoes. We do chopped up cucumbers too, because a lot of us really like cucumbers, green onions, cilantro leaves, some lime wedges, maybe some warmed up refried beans, some shredded cheddar cheese, pull out the tub of sour cream and the jar of salsa, some tortilla chips to crush over top. If I have avocado diced or some guacamole. So it's basically chopping a few things and putting some things out on the counter while the rice and the meat cook. And then everybody makes their own bowls and everybody is very happy. So because I do so many of these bowls, I've actually started kind of riffing on them, especially when it's just me and Marty at home. And I know that I can just use ingredients that the two of us for sure like, and then I can make it sort of more structured, I guess, or like with a more specific vision, which is how this steak and rice bowl came about. It is a chimichurri steak bowl, and it is my newest favorite thing, hands down. So even though I usually just make this for me and Marty, I do always make leftovers. So this will definitely serve 4 or even 6 people, depending on your appetites. You may need to increase the amount of rice a little bit. And I will say that I'm giving instructions for making all of the components, the rice, the meat, and the vegetables, and the chimichurri sauce. But if you have leftovers of any of these components, then that saves a step. If you have leftover steak, you're just slicing it while cold and warming it up. You have leftover rice, it's a great idea to put it into a bowl with a little bit of water, cover it, and microwave it. The water helps steam it and keep it fluffy. If you have leftover cooked vegetables, roasted vegetables, you could use those instead of the ones I'm going to tell you about. And you're going to make the chimichurri sauce from scratch, fresh. It's really easy though. Now I will say also that one of the things I love the most about this meal is that you could kind of do it as it's going. Like you don't have to do a lot of prep ahead of time. You're going to start the rice going while it's cooking. You're going to get your veggies started chopping, and then you're going to start cooking up your meat. Then once the meat is resting, you're cooking up the veggies. While the veggies are cooking, you're making your chimichurri sauce. So it's like a little bit multitasking, but not super hard, because it's kind of like watching one thing cook while you prep another thing at all times. Okay, let's jump in. Okay, you'll start by sprinkling the flank steak with a little bit of salt. So we have a 1.5 to 2 pound flank steak sprinkled evenly with 1/2 teaspoon of salt all over. We're not putting anything else on this flank because it's going to get so much flavor from that chimichurri sauce smothered all over it later, so we don't need to do very much else there. Now, let that sit off to the side for a moment while you get your rice started. Now, I'll tell you that my favorite way to cook rice these days is in the Instant Pot, so I will link in the show notes to how to do that. But this recipe has you doing it on the stove. You are getting out a small or medium saucepan and combining 2 cups of chicken stock or water with 1 cup of uncooked long grain white rice and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Give it a stir. You don't rinse the rice first for this. Then over high heat, you bring it up to a boil. Once it is nice and boiling and foamy, you give it a stir, turn it way down to low, like barely a simmer, put the lid on and leave it until all the liquid is absorbed. And actually, when you open the lid and look, you'll see almost these like little tunnels going down into the rice. That means it is done. It'll be about 17 to 20 minutes. And I do always like to give it a fluff with a fork and then just taste in the middle from somewhere and make sure that it is fully cooked. Take it off the heat and leave the lid on to keep it warm. Now, while that rice is cooking during those 17 to 20 minutes, that is when you're going to start cooking your flank steak. So you're going to get out a large skillet and you heat 1 tablespoon of olive oil in that skillet over medium-high heat until it's shimmering. Then add in that flank steak. If you needed to cut it in half to fit it in your pan, that's fine. You do it all at once. It's cooking for 6 minutes on each side for medium, a little bit less if you like it rarer, a little more if you like it more well done. I will say that one of the things I like about flank steak, skirt steak too, oh, and my new favorite thing is tri-tip. I'm going to be telling you about that soon. All of these like larger cuts of steak that you cook, then rest, then slice, they tend to be uneven in thickness, and the edge pieces and those thinner pieces tend to end up a little bit more well done than some of the middle pieces and thicker pieces. So if you have a family like mine where everybody kind of likes their steak cooked differently, you end up with different donenesses throughout that steak. Some people might say that's a flaw because it's not like evenly cooked. I think it's a huge perk. Now, to know if your steak is done to your liking, for this kind of thing, I like to just use an instant read thermometer stuck into a couple places when I think it's close to done. You can cut into it instead. I do love my probe thermometer with it has this wire and then an electronic piece attached where I can watch the temperature rising. I find that when I'm doing stuff on the stove and flipping things over, that wire is kind of annoying. So I don't like using that for this. Okay, while that steak is cooking, you prep your veggies. That is 1 pint of cherry tomatoes that you're cutting in half, 2 red bell peppers that you're cutting into 3/4 inch pieces, and 2 medium zucchinis cut into 3/4 inch pieces, and a large red onion cut into 3/4 inch pieces. So those are all kind of roughly chopped up, right? And so then once that steak is taken out of the skillet and transferred to a nice clean cutting board to rest, I would tent it with some foil so it stays warm. You are going to add 2 more tablespoons of olive oil to that same skillet. And when it's shimmering, those veggies are going in: tomatoes, bell peppers, zucchini, and red onion, and another half teaspoon of salt. Give that a good toss to coat everything in the salt. Add oil, and then you're cooking it, stirring occasionally until the veggies start to char a little bit in the pan. So it's about 8 to 10 minutes, which ideally is the amount of time that you want to rest the steak anyways. You know what I mean? So at this point, your rice is probably finishing cooking. It probably has a little bit longer. Your steak is resting. Your veggies are cooking. You're going to make the homemade chimichurri sauce. So to a food processor or a blender, you are adding a half cup of firmly packed fresh parsley leaves. You can add a tablespoon of fresh oregano leaves if you have them. If you don't, do not use dried oregano. I tasted it. It makes it kind of taste like a salad dressing. It's just not good here. So just skip the oregano if you don't have fresh. 2 cloves of garlic that you've peeled, 6 tablespoons of a nice tasting olive oil, 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, and optionally a pinch of crushed red pepper flakes. And then you're just pulsing that 4 or 5 times until it's nice and chopped or to whatever consistency you like. When those veggies are done, just take the skillet off of the heat. They're going to stay warm and they'll probably stop cooking. Give it another stir. Then you can slice your steak. Make sure you're going against the grain. Skirt steak is the trickiest one for this, so I will definitely link to my skirt steak recipe so you can see there's a video and there are some pictures showing how to slice it. I will link to my flank steak one as well so that you can see that. And the tri-tip is not up yet. That one is really tricky, and I do have a really fun diagram showing how to slice tri-tip, but if you're using the tri-tip, you're going to have to wait on that. So I have the information on flank steak and skirt steak. Crucially, you are just slicing against the grain. Then take your rice and divide it evenly between 4 bowls, top with those slices of steak, and then top with some of those charred vegetables and drizzle on the chimichurri sauce. You see, that one just comes together so easily. I'm going to say I'm looking at the recipe on Cook the Story right now, and it seems to indicate that it takes longer to cook than I think it does. It has cook time of 40 minutes, prep time of 15 minutes. But for this one, I really think you can be doing the prep for everything as the other things cook, and it's not super stressful. You can have this dinner done start to finish in 30 minutes. Okay, I'll put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, along with all the other links that I mentioned, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and find it there, or go to cookthestory.com and use the search function there. That always helps you find all kinds of great recipes. And I'm going to remind you that if you make this recipe and love it, or if you make any of the recipes from my site, I would really appreciate a 5-star rating and a comment. Those 5 stars especially really help other people find my website and build my business. So anytime you can leave one of those ratings, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening and for all the comments and ratings you've already been leaving. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook. And from this podcast, recipe of the day, I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.